My name is Todd Owsley, and I'm 63 years old. Last June, a film crew drove out to Millbrook, Ohio to record what they kept calling our family's success story. The cider mill my wife and I started in a rented barn in 1991. A girl with a duffel bag clipped a microphone to my collar at 9 in the morning. Then they spent 8 hours filming my daughter and my son explain how they built all of it themselves. My name came off that office door in January. That afternoon, it came off the story. I stood by the press and let them talk because I had already decided to sign every last thing over to them that night. The papers were folded in my coat pocket. Nobody in that building knew my microphone had never been switched off. Before I take you in there, do me a favor. Like this, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. Now let me take you back to the second Tuesday of last October, the morning my left hand stopped working. October 14th, 6:40 in the morning. I was weighing the first batch of apple butter, same as I had for 34 Octobers, and the wooden spoon came out of my left hand and hit the floor. I bent down for it. My hand wouldn't close. I stood in the mixing room with the compressor cycling behind me and watched my own fingers refuse me. 40 minutes. I counted the cycles. 90 seconds apiece. Hollis Mercer found me at 7:15. He's been my plant manager for 33 years, and he has never once asked me a question he already knew the answer to. "Boss," he said, "truck's running." They called it a TIA at Cedar County General, a small stroke that lets go of you. The doctor was maybe 35 and she was kind about it. 3 weeks off, no lifting, come back for imaging. I wasn't scared in the ambulance. I want to be honest with you about where the fear actually showed up. It showed up on a clipboard. The nurse handed me an intake form, and I read the first line, and then I read it again. And then I read it a third time while she stood there waiting. That was the moment. Not the hand, the clipboard. Ruth used to fill out our forms. Ruth's been gone since 2019. 36 hours later, my daughter came through the door of room 214 with her coat still on and a folder under her arm. Dana doesn't waste a trip. She set the folder on the tray table and rolled it over my legs, and she'd already taken the cap off the pen. "It's just so the bank doesn't panic, Dad," she said. "Sign where the tabs are." I signed 11 pages that afternoon. I read 2. Here's what was actually in the folder: a management agreement, a transfer of membership units. When the ink dried, my daughter held 40% of Owsley Provisions. My son Bryce held 30. Dana's husband Kevin held 8. I held 22% and no management rights at all. I want you to understand that nobody lied to me in that room. That's the part that took me the longest to sit with. Dana explained every page in a warm voice while a machine beeped over my shoulder. "This is estate planning," she said. "This protects you." From what? From having to do this later. Under worse conditions. She said Mom would have wanted it clean. She said it twice. I'll tell you what Ruth wanted because I was there. Ruth was 55 and down to 89 pounds, and she held my wrist with both hands and made me promise that the business would never split this family. I said yes. You say yes. You'd have said yes too. 10 years later, that promise was sitting in a hospital room wearing a nice coat. "I'll read it tonight," I said. "It's already filed, Dad." She kissed my forehead. She meant it. That's the thing people get wrong about my daughter. She meant every single kiss. I lay there afterward and did the arithmetic I should have done first. 22%. No vote, no signature required on anything that mattered. Outside my window, the leaves were coming off the maples on Route 42, and I thought about the mill sitting out there in the dark, humming, running without me for the first time since I was 28. I didn't think about the ground underneath it, not for another 7 months. I came back on January 5th. I parked where I always park. I walked the long way through the packing room so people could see I was upright. Rosalie Trapp squeezed my arm and told me I looked terrible, which is how she says she loves you. Then I got to my office. The door had new gold lettering on it: Dana Owsley Hale, CEO. Clean, centered, professional. Somebody had taken the old letters off with a razor blade and done a good job of it. You couldn't see a ghost of my name anywhere. Bryce came down the hall with his hands in his pockets, smiling like he had a present for me. "Dad, come see." He walked me 40 feet to the old break room. They'd painted it, new carpet, a desk, a leather chair still wrapped in plastic. On the door, a brass plate, Founder's Office. There was no window, there was no phone line. "It's quieter back here," Bryce said. "You're supposed to be resting." "Where do I take calls?" "Nobody's calling you, Dad. That's the point." He heard it a half-second late and laughed. "That came out wrong. It's a brand decision, nothing personal." 34 years and my son used the word brand about a room. I want to be fair. He wasn't cruel that morning. He was cheerful. He'd solved a problem, and the problem was where to put me. That afternoon, I noticed the wall over the loading dock was bare. The hand-painted sign Ruth and I made in 1991, the one with the crooked apple, the one she painted crooked on purpose, was gone. Hollis had taken it down and carried it up to the loft before they could throw it out. He didn't tell me that for 5 more months. Let me show you what we actually had, so the rest of this means something. 41 people. That's the whole number, in Millbrook, Ohio. That's the largest payroll in the village limits, and it isn't close. Rosalie Trapp ran the line. 26 years. Raised 2 boys alone on that press. Marcus, in shipping, got sober in 2022, and I have his 2-year chip in my desk because he asked me to hold it. Denise in QC had a baby girl in April and named her after her grandmother. The hydraulic press is from 1991, and it still runs. The handle is worn into the shape of a hand. My hand, mostly. In the front hallway, there's a brass plaque the county put up in 2023 when they gave us the abatement. Cedar County Job Retention Agreement, 2023 to 2033. 38 full-time positions. People walk past it every day like it was a fire extinguisher. And on the shelf above the mixing station, there's a green metal recipe box. Ruth's handwriting on every card and pencil because she said pen made you commit before you were ready. Card 14 is the apple butter. It's still card 14. We photograph her handwriting for the labels. That January, my granddaughter Willa got a school assignment, family history, 5th grade. She's 11, and she interviews like a prosecutor. "Grandpa, when did the company start?" 1991. "Who started it?" I told her the truth, and she wrote it down, and I felt good for about 6 weeks. I want to be clear that I was not unhappy that winter. I had a leather chair and a brass plate and 41 people who still called me boss. I had no idea a bank was already asking questions about me. Nadine Brody asked me for coffee in February. She's been at Cedar County Savings 19 years. She does not ask you for coffee to be social. We sat in the front window at Halberds, and she stirred her cup for a while. "Todd, I have to say something, and I'd rather say it here." "Go ahead." "You're still on the paper." I didn't follow her. "The 2009 note," she said. "We refinanced it in 2014, and again in 2021. Your personal guarantee carried over both times. Nobody ever released it." I set my cup down. In 2009, the whole thing nearly went under. 2 accounts pulled in a month. I had a choice between cutting 14 people and mortgaging the farmhouse, and I mortgaged the farmhouse. Ruth signed next to me at the kitchen table. Nobody got laid off. It took us 6 years to climb out. Ruth is buried behind that house now, under the pin oak 40 steps from the back door. "So if the company goes down," I said, "they come to you, and the property's still pledged." I sat with that. 22%. No vote. No say in a single decision. And the only house I've ever owned still standing behind the whole thing like a man holding a ladder. Nadine turned her spoon over. "There's something else. Dana called me in January. She wanted to know what refinancing would look like ahead of a large transaction." "What transaction?" "She didn't say. I assumed you knew." I smiled at her the way you do when you're buying time. "I'd like copies," I said. "Everything I've ever signed. Take as long as you need." She had them to me in 9 days. I didn't open the envelope until May. In March, the county sent a letter. The Cedar County Legacy Award, a short documentary about the business produced for the state's Small Town series screened at the Grange Hall on Founders Day, June 13th. Dana read it out loud at the staff meeting, and people clapped. I clapped. I'm not going to pretend I didn't want it. Then she hired Marissa Kettleman. Marissa flew in from Chicago with a deck called Narrative Architecture. She wore very good boots, and she smiled at everyone with equal warmth, which I've since learned is a kind of warning. She put a slide up. On the left, a column labeled Dad's Era. On the right, one labeled The Build. I was in a column. We're not erasing anything, she said. We're simplifying. Audiences hold one story. She worked on the language for 2 hours. She kept correcting my kids. Don't say we grew it. Say we built it. Grew is passive. Then a slide came up with a bullet that said, De-emphasize 2009, legacy risk. The year I put my house up so nobody lost a job. Legacy risk. I asked what that meant. Marissa said the 2009 story reads as instability to a certain kind of viewer. Bryce nodded along like he'd been there. Bryce was 17 in 2009. He was playing outfield. Then she said the sentence I've thought about most. Investors don't fund committees. They fund a founder. Singular. I asked her which founder. She smiled and clicked to the next slide. Jonah Prentice, the director, was setting a bag down by the door. He'd flown in from Columbus that morning, and he was already thinking about logistics. We'll run a feed line to the hall early, he said, so we can test the PA before the crowd shows. Nobody wrote that down. The last week of May, Dana came to the farmhouse with a folder and a bottle of wine she knew I wouldn't open. She spread the papers on the kitchen table where her mother used to grade her spelling. We need to move the mill property into the company, she said. Balance sheet has to be clean. I looked at it. A deed transfer. My name on the top line. Clean for who? For growth, Dad. Then she did the thing she does. She didn't raise her voice. She sat down next to me and put her hand on my forearm and lowered her chin. You promised Mom this wouldn't split us. And there it was. Ruth's hand on my wrist in 2019, coming out of my daughter's mouth in 2026. And you've been tired since October, she said. Let me carry it. I looked at the papers a long time, and I want you to hear this because it's the first honest thing I did in 8 months. I need a week, I said. I want to read it. Dana went very still, not angry, calculating. She was recalculating a schedule. Sure, she said. Of course. That night I drove out to get my coat from the founder's office. 9:40 lights off in the plant, just the compressor cycling. The printer in the hall had a page sitting in the tray. Somebody had sent a job and walked away. I picked it up because I'm the kind of man who tidies a printer tray. The header said, Phase 2 Consolidation, Dyer County, Tennessee. I stood under that hallway light for a long time with my reading glasses in my shirt pocket and my hands not quite working right. Then I read it 4 times. The page was a summary sheet, 4 bullets and a table. Consolidate all production at a co-packing facility in Dyer County, Tennessee. Target completion first quarter 2027. Retain an Ohio brand office. Headcount Ohio 6. 41 to 6. I sat in the founder's office with the plastic still on the arm of that chair, and I did what any father would do. I decided there had to be a version of this I was misreading. I brought it to Bryce the next morning. I laid it on his desk face up. He didn't flinch, that's what I remember, not one muscle. That's contingency modeling, he said. Every company runs those. 6 jobs is a contingency. 6 is a scenario, Dad. It's not a plan. There's a difference. Explain the difference to Rosalie. He leaned back. He smiled at me with real affection, which somehow made it worse. You built a mill, he said. We're building a company. I've turned that sentence over maybe 1,000 times since. He wasn't insulting me. In his mind, he'd said something generous. I stood up to go, and I saw it on the corner of his desk, half under a coffee cup. A boarding pass stub. Columbus to Nashville, April 4th. 6 weeks before he told me it was a scenario. Nice trip, I said. He looked at the stub, then at me, and for about a half second my son's face did something I hadn't seen since he was 9 and broke the storm door. Conference, he said. I went out through the packing room. Rosalie was closing on her house in 11 days. She had the listing sheet taped inside her locker door where everybody could see it. I walked past it twice. I did it the right way first. I want that on the record. I sent a written request for a members' meeting. Proper notice, proper language, the way Paula's office would have told me to do it, if I'd called Paula yet. Dana turned it into dinner. Saturday, 6 o'clock, her house on Ridgeline. Roasted chicken, a good bottle, cloth napkins. Kevin poured. Willa was upstairs with a tablet. "We're not doing a boardroom thing," Dana said. "We're a family." I got about 2 sentences in. "I'd like to talk about Tennessee," Bryce put his fork down. "It's modeling. I'd like it minuted." "Dad." Dana smiled at the table. "Nobody's minuting dinner." Then she said pleasantly, "But since you asked, Kevin and Bryce and I have discussed it. We're aligned." 78% sitting across a chicken from 22. I looked at Kevin. My son-in-law is not a bad man. He's a man who has never once been the second loudest person in a room and would like to keep it that way. He looked at the tablecloth and he stayed there.
"Then let me ask for one thing," I said. "Not a vote. Tell them." "Tell who?" "Everybody out there. Tell them what's on the table before they hear it some other way." Dana refilled my water glass. "That would be irresponsible right now," she said. "You'd panic 40 families over a scenario." "Then it's a scenario." "Dad." "You just said it panics them. Scenarios don't panic people. Plans do." The room got quiet in the way rooms do when everyone hears the same thing at once. Then Willa came down for a glass of milk, and we all put our faces back on, and that was the end of the quiet way. The rehearsals started the first week of June. Marissa called them story sessions. They set 2 stools in the tasting room and ran the kids through it on camera, over and over, while I sat in the back row on a folding chair nobody had asked me to bring. "Take it from the beginning," Marissa said. Dana looked into the lens. "There was no playbook. We wrote it ourselves." "Good." Again, warmer. "There was no playbook. We wrote it ourselves." Bryce's turn. "We took a small regional operation and built a brand." "Don't say took, say built." "We built a brand out of a barn." He's never been in the barn. It was torn down in 1996. Here's the strange part. Sitting there, I didn't feel rage. I felt the specific embarrassment of watching someone do an impression of you badly in front of people, while everyone politely agrees it's a good impression. At one point, Marissa turned around. "Todd, we'd love a line from you, something like, 'I'm so proud of what they've built.'" That's the line. "That's the line." I said it. "Take 1. She said it was perfect. Then Dana filmed a piece about the recipe box. She held up card 14, her mother's pencil handwriting, and said, "We developed this in the early days." We. Ruth wrote that card on a sandwich in November 1993 with a cold, and I know because I was holding the pot. I got up and went out to the dock for air. Hollis was out there with a cigarette he wasn't smoking. "Boss," he said, "you got time to come up to the loft?" "For what?" "There's something up there I never told you about." The loft over the old packing bay smells like dust and apples and 1994. Hollis pulled a moving blanket off a stack against the wall. The sign. Our sign. 4 feet of pine board, the Crooked Apple, Owsley Cider and Pie House EST, 1991 in Ruth's lettering. She painted the apple crooked because I told her a straight one looked like a corporation. Behind it, the first press. The hand crank. The one that gave me the callus on the right palm I still have. And a shoebox of customer letters from 1994 rubber-banded a woman in Worcester thanking us for shipping her mother a jar in a hospital. I sat down on the crate. "Bryce told me to pitch it," Hollis said. "I told him I did." "You lied to my son." "I lied to your son." We sat there a while. Then he said the other thing and his voice changed. "Boss, they've got me training a team." "What team?" "Process consultants, 4 of them. Been here 6 weeks. Consultants come and go. They're staying at the motel on 42, all 4. They're not from here." "Where are they from?" Hollis took a long time answering, and he wouldn't look at the sign when he did it. "Dyer County," he said. The compressor kicked on downstairs. 90 seconds. I counted it out of habit the way I'd counted it on the floor of the mixing room in October. "They're not learning our process,"
I said. No, sir, they're copying it. I looked at that crooked apple for a long moment. Don't let them throw the sign out, I said. I've kept it 11 years, Hollis said. I figured somebody'd want it back.
Rosalie closed on her house on a Thursday. She'd rented for 26 years. 2 boys, 1 income, 1 press. She invited exactly 4 people to the title office, and I was one of them, and I understood what that meant. The lawyer's office is above the flower shop on Main. Cheap chairs, a stack of papers an inch thick, a pen on a chain. She sat down and looked at the papers, and then she looked up at me, and she asked it straight out the way she asks everything. Todd, is the plant okay? 41 people, 30 years of trust, 1 question, and I couldn't answer it. Page 9 of what I signed in that hospital room was a confidentiality provision. I'd read it in April, sitting in the truck with Nadine's envelope in my lap. I was legally muzzled about my own company. I could have broken it. I've thought about that. If I'd broken it right there in that little office, Dana's lawyers would have had a reason to say I was unstable, and by June, they'd have had a doctor's note and a conservatorship conversation, and every word I said afterward would have come with an asterisk. So here's what I said. It's not enough. I know it's not enough. I'll do everything I can. She smiled at me. She actually smiled. That's always been plenty, she said, and she picked up the pen on the chain and she signed 30 years of payments. I watched her do it. I drove home the long way, past the mill, past the pin oak behind my house where Ruth is, and I sat in the truck in my own driveway until the dome light timed out. I'd made a promise I had no legal right to keep. Let me step out of the story for a second because I've thought about that afternoon more than any other part of this. Rosalie signed 30 years on my word, and I wasn't the one holding the pen anymore. If you've ever given somebody your word after you'd already lost the power to keep it, tell me in the comments what you did next. I read every one of them, and if this is worth your time so far, a like helps it find the people who need it. Alright, back to Millbrook. June was coming. Grant Whitfield came to the mill on the 5th of June. Whitfield Ridge Capital. 52 years old, half-zip sweater, the kind of watch that doesn't tell you anything about the man wearing it. I wasn't on the schedule. I found that out from the schedule, which was printed and pinned in the break room, and which had a line for everyone in the building except me. So I did what I've done for visitors since 1993. I stopped at Halberd's and bought 4 trays of sandwiches and a box of the oatmeal cookies Ruth liked, and I carried them into the conference room at 11:40. Whitfield was at the whiteboard. He turned around, saw a 63-year-old man in a work jacket holding food, and gave me a nice warm nod. Just set it on the back table, Chief. Appreciate you coming out. Dana was 4 feet away. She could have said 1 word, 2 syllables. Dad. She looked at the sandwiches. Thanks, she said. You can close the door. I set the trays down and I closed the door. I stood in that hallway, my epoxy floor. I laid it in 2004, and through the gap by the hinge I heard Whitfield say it. Look, the numbers work. The story's the problem. A pause. The narrative only works with 1 founder. Then Dana's voice, easy and light. That's handled. I walked out to the truck and sat there with the radio off. 2 syllables. That's all it would have cost her. And I understood finally that I wasn't being pushed out of a company. I was being edited. That night I opened Nadine's envelope all the way to the back. There were 60-some pages in that envelope. Loan documents, refinance packets, the guarantee I never got released. And behind all of it, 3 sheets stapled in the corner, so plain I almost put them back. A lease. Lessor, Todd A. Owsley, individually. Lessee Owsley, Provisions LLC, premises, 9.4 acres and improvements, 1400 Millbrook Road. Rent, $1 per year. Term, 1 year. Expiring December 31st, 2026. Renewable only by written instrument signed by the lessor. I sat at the kitchen table and read it 4 times, and then I got up and walked out the back door and stood in the dark near the pin oak. The 9 acres came from Ruth's family, her grandfather's orchard ground. When we incorporated in 1998, the lawyer said, keep the dirt out of the company, and I said fine, because I didn't care about dirt, I cared about a press. Every December for 20-some years, a renewal letter came in a manila envelope. I signed it in the truck with the engine running. It took 11 seconds. I never read it once. The company that was about to be worth $12 million did not own 1 square foot of the ground it stood on.
Everything they were selling, the plant, the tour footage, the shot of the crooked road and the water tower, sat on 9 4/10 acres belonging to a man with no vote, no office phone, and no line in the schedule. I stood out there a long time. I want to be honest about what I felt because it wasn't triumph, it was shame. 35 years and the most important thing I owned was the one thing I'd never bothered to think about. Paula Reinhardt has an office over a hardware store in Ashland, 40 minutes east. She's 61 and she's been doing farm and small business work since before I had employees. She read for 20 minutes without saying anything. Then she took her glasses off. All right, here's where you stand. Go. You can't stop the transaction. 22% no management rights. That ship's gone. I know. But nothing moves without you. She tapped the lease. This expires in December. If you don't sign a renewal, they have no plant. No production, no collateral, no tour, no deal. And the guarantee? Still live. Which means you're carrying the downside of a plan they haven't shown you. She said it flatly. That's the part I'd be angry about if I were you. Then she leaned forward and gave me the hard road. Refuse the renewal now. Put them in default posture. Call the register, call the county, get it in the paper before their money closes. You'd have leverage in 10 days. I sat with that. I want to tell you the truth about that morning because it's the only part of this I'm actually proud of. I could see it. All of it. The headline, my daughter's face, Bryce's phone going off in a parking lot in Nashville. No, I said. Paula waited. I'm going to ask her once, I said, in my own kitchen, no lawyers. If she tells them the truth herself, I'll sign the ground over for nothing. And if she won't, then she'll have chosen it, not me. Paula put her glasses back on. Then I'll do one thing, she said. I'll request the county's 2023 job agreement. It's public record. Anybody can ask. 9 days later, it came in the mail. I made her dinner on a Tuesday, pot roast, her mother's way, carrots cut on the bias. I waited until the plates were clear. Dana, one offer, it's simple, okay? Tell the crew the truth about 2009. Tell the floor about Tennessee, before Founders Day. I put my hand flat on the table. Do that, and I'll sign the ground over to the company tomorrow. Free, no lawyer, no conditions. For about 4 seconds, my daughter looked like my daughter. Then she set her fork down. I can't do that. Why? Because Grant walks. And if Grant walks, the line doesn't refinance. Her voice stayed level. And I've personally guaranteed $2.4 million. There it was. She'd signed the same kind of paper I signed in 2009, at the same kitchen table, at almost the same age. Dana. So no, I'm not going to blow up my house to make you feel remembered. I didn't answer that. I've never repeated that sentence to anyone until right now. Then she reached across and took my hand, the way she used to when she was small. Dad, Mom asked you not to do this. Do what? Split us. I'm asking you to tell the truth. You've been confused since October. Gentle, almost tender. You read things 3 times. I've watched you. I'm not confused. I'm slow now. Those are different. If you push this, Willa loses her grandfather and I lose my house. She squeezed my fingers. Is that what you want? She let go, picked up her purse, and kissed my forehead at the door, and she meant it, and that's the part that keeps me up. 9 days later, my badge stopped working. Monday, 6:50 in the morning, first shift. I put my badge on the reader at the side door and it went red. I tried it twice more because that's what a man does. Marcus opened it from the inside. It's froze up on you, boss. Something like that. The email was waiting on my phone, from HR, which is one woman in Mansfield who handles our payroll. Effective immediately, non-employee visitors require escort while on the production floor. Insurance requirement. Non-employee visitors. I'd been in that building at 6:50 in the morning since before the county paved the road to it. Bryce came out with a clipboard he didn't need. The whole first shift was clocking in behind him. 20-some people watching their founder stand outside a door. It's a liability thing, Dad. Corporate carrier. Who signs me in? Anybody on payroll. Rosalie came around the corner with her coat still buttoned, took one look and wrote her own name on the sheet. "He's with me," she said. Rice didn't argue. He wrote something down instead. I watched him do it. He wrote her name in the margin of the clipboard and he underlined it. I stood there in the doorway of a plant I built with a woman I'd known for 26 years, escorting me past my own press. Nobody laughed. That's what I want you to understand. Not one person on that floor thought it was funny. Denise from QC put her hand on my back as she went by and didn't say anything. That was the first time I saw somebody get punished for standing next to me. It wasn't the last, and it wasn't the worst thing that happened that week. That came on Thursday, in a 5th grade classroom. Willa asked me to hear her essay before she read it at school. We sat on the porch steps. She had it in a plastic sleeve because it was going in a binder for the county. "Ready?" she said. "Ready." She cleared her throat like a professional. My family owns a company in Millbrook, Ohio. My mom built our company from nothing after my grandma died. She turned a small factory into a real brand. She read for 2 minutes. My name wasn't in it. Not left out cruelly, just not there. The way a road isn't in a picture of a house. When she finished, she looked up at me with her whole face open, waiting. "That's a fine piece of writing, honey," I said. I want to be clear, I do not regret saying that. She's 11. She wrote what she was told at her own dinner table by people she trusts. That's not a child's sin. "Miss Aldridge picked mine," she said. "I get to read it at the Grange on Founders Day, before the movie." "That's a big deal." "I know." She went inside for a juice box and came back out and stood in front of the shelf by the door where the picture is. 28-year-old man flannel, standing next to a hand crank press in a rented barn in 1991, squinting. She'd walked past that picture her entire life. "Grandpa," she said, "who's that? The compressor sound isn't out at my house. There's nothing out there but crickets and the pin oak." "Somebody who worked there," I said, "a long time ago." She nodded and went back to her juice box. I sat on those steps until the porch light came on by itself. And that was the night I decided to sign. June 12th, the night before, Dana came by at 8 with a card the size of a postcard. My part of the ceremony. 40 words. I counted them. "After the film, Jonah brings you up. You say this, then you and I sign the transfer on stage." She smiled. "It'll be beautiful. Everybody gets to see it." I read the card. "I am so proud of what my children have built here in Millbrook. Owsley Provisions has always been a family story, and now I'm handing the future to my children." "Handing?" I said. "Marissa's word." "It's a good word." She looked at me carefully, the way you look at a dog that stopped growling. "You're okay with this?" "I'll say it exactly like it's written." She hugged me and left, and I heard her car go down the gravel. Then I got the deed transfer out of the drawer. Paula had marked the signature line with a green tab, the way you mark something you don't want a man to sign. I signed it. "I want you to sit with that, because everything you're about to hear depends on it." I signed it. Full name, date, my hand steady enough. Then I folded it into an envelope, wrote nothing on the outside, and put it in the inside pocket of my coat. And I hung the coat by the door so I wouldn't forget it. I had no plan. I wasn't going to fight anybody. I was going to stand up in that hall and say 40 words about my children and hand over the last thing I owned. Then I walked out back and told Ruth where things stood, the way I do in numbers, because she always said I was better with numbers than with feelings. Everything that happened the next day happened because a 26-year-old sound tech was too polite to argue with my daughter. June 13th, 9:02 in the morning. The sound tech was a young woman named Emily Rooker, 26 headphones around her neck, gaffer tape on her sleeve like a bracelet. She clipped a lavalier to my collar and ran the cable inside my shirt and slid the transmitter into my back pocket. "Channel 2, she said. "You're hot all day. Easier than remiking everybody at 4. "Hot means on." "Hot means on," she grinned. "Just don't say anything you wouldn't want your mother to hear." Then Dana walked her a few steps toward the packing bay. I was 10 feet away and my hearing is fine. "Keep Dad's channel down during the interviews," she said. "He mutters." Emily said, "Sure." They filmed for 8 hours. They filmed Dana in front of the press saying there was no playbook, we wrote it ourselves. They filmed Bryce in the loading bay saying we doubled down on Millbrook. This community is the whole point. He said it with his hand on the doorframe I hung in 1997. They filmed the label close-up, Ruth's pencil handwriting, 40 feet of it blown up on a card for the camera. Dana said we developed this early on. Jonah asked me for 2 lines around noon. I gave him the 40 words off the card. He said, "Perfect, thank you, sir," and moved on. Nobody asked me anything else all day. At 3 o'clock, I stood by the press with my hand on the worn part of the handle where the steel goes concave in the shape of a palm. My palm.
It fits the way a wedding ring fits. Emily walked by with a coil of cable and said, "Sorry, sir, we're running a line to the hall." I said, "Take your time." Millbrook Grange Hall was built in 1946 and the floor still gives under a crowd. By 4:15, they had 200 folding chairs out and a screen on a stand and the old house speakers hanging off the beams. Jonah's crew patched their board straight into the PA so they could level it before the room filled. They tested it with whatever channel was open. I wasn't there for any of this. I'm telling you what 40 people have since told me. The room filled early the way small towns do. First shift came straight from the plant, still in hairnets. Rosalie had her boys with her. Marcus wore a tie. Mayor Dale Ferber shook every hand along the aisle. Nadine Brody sat in the 5th row. Arlene Voss, county commissioner, sat on the end with a yellow folder in her lap. She'd had it since Paula's records request cleared. Grant Whitfield took a seat in the front row and put his phone face down on his knee. At 4:35, Miss Aldridge brought Willa up on the little stage to open Founders Day, because the county had picked her essay. Willa unzipped the plastic sleeve, and she read a different one. "I interviewed my grandpa twice," she read. "He made me check the dates. Our company started in 1991 in a rented barn. My grandma wrote the recipes in pencil." I found out later that she'd asked Rosalie 2 questions at the plant picnic and gone home and rewritten the whole thing on notebook paper. 200 people clapped for an 11-year-old. Then the room went quiet and waited for the movie. Nobody had touched the board. Channel 2 was still up, and I was out back on the loading dock with Hollis Mercer. I'm going to pause here one last time, and then I won't interrupt again. I've told this next part out loud exactly twice. Once to a lawyer, once to my granddaughter years later when she was old enough to ask properly. It takes 4 minutes. If you're still with me, do one thing first. Hit subscribe. So the next time somebody's father gets written out of his own story, you get to hear how it ended. 4:40 in the afternoon, the loading dock behind the mill. Hollis had a cigarette he wasn't smoking. I had my coat over my arm with the envelope in it. "You're really going to sign it," he said. "Tonight, on the stage." "Why?" "Because I told Ruth I wouldn't let this split them." He turned and looked at me. "Then tell them about Tennessee." And I did, out loud, to one man on a concrete dock with the compressor cycling behind us. I said the plan closes this plant in the first quarter of 2027. I said 41 goes to 6. I said the 4 men at the motel on 42 are from Dyer County, and they're not consultants, they're the ones taking it. In the hall, 200 people heard my voice come out of the ceiling. Rosalie stood up out of her chair. Nobody stopped her. I kept going because Hollis asked me how it got this way, and the only honest answer is a history. I said Ruth mixed the first batch in a rented barn in November of 1991, and card 14 is her handwriting and her pencil. I said in 2009 I mortgaged the farmhouse instead of cutting 14 people, and that the guarantee on that house has never been released, and that if this thing goes down, they come for the ground my wife is buried on. Arlene Voss opened the yellow folder in her lap. Grant Whitfield picked up his phone. Then I asked Hollis for the only favor I asked anybody that year. "Don't tell Rosalie till after Christmas. She just bought a house." And Hollis said, "Boss," in a voice I'd never heard him use. I told him I don't blame my kids. I said it plain. I raised them in a business. I didn't raise them in a home. That part's mine, and I've had years to decide whose fault it is, and it's mine. And then I said the last thing. Just don't let them put Ruth's handwriting on a label made in Tennessee. That's the only thing I'll fight about. Then the compressor kicked on, and Hollis said my name, and I turned around. My daughter was running across the gravel with her shoes in her hand. "Turn it off," Dana said. "Turn it off, turn it off." She got the transmitter out of my back pocket herself. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped it,
and the battery door came off on the concrete. Dana, what? She couldn't say it. She just pointed at the hall. Emily Rooker came around the corner at a dead run with her headphones around her neck and her face the color of paper. Sir, I am so sorry. For what? I muted your monitor. She was crying and still explaining the way people do when they'd rather be technical than upset. She told me to keep you down, so I pulled your monitor feed. I never muted your channel. It was routed to the hall. It's been live since 9. 4 minutes and 10 seconds, she said later. She'd counted it off the time code. Jonah Prentice came out with the camera on his shoulder still rolling. He looked at me, not at Dana, at me. Sir, do you want me to stop? 200 people were on the other side of that wall. My daughter was standing in the gravel in her stocking feet. No, I said. Bryce came out the side door, already talking. Everybody's phones. We collect phones at the door, right now. Nobody films. Mr. Owsley? Arlene Voss was in the doorway, with the yellow folder against her chest. You do not confiscate anything from anyone in that room. Here's the strange thing. Nobody recorded it. The board was patched to the speakers, not to a deck. There is no file. There never was. The only thing that exists is what 200 people heard. Voss looked past him at Dana. Ms. Owsley Hale, is the county's job agreement still accurate? They never showed the film. At 5:05, I walked up onto that stage because it was on the program and because I've never once left a room I was scheduled to be in. 200 people, hairnets and church clothes. Nobody made a sound. I took the card out of my shirt pocket. I read it exactly as written. I am so proud of what my children have built here in Millbrook. Owsley Provisions has always been a family story, and now I'm handing the future to my children. I set the card on the podium. Then I took the envelope out of my coat and held it up so they could see it was signed, and I tore it in half. It wasn't dramatic. It's a small, dry sound in a microphone. I'm not taking anything back, I said. I'm just done signing things I haven't read. Then I said the 4 things. I'd written them on the back of the card in the truck that morning, which tells you something I didn't know about myself. 1. The ground under that plant is mine personally. I'll renew the lease for 10 years at fair market rent on the condition that production stays in Cedar County and headcount holds at 38 or better through 2033. 2. My personal guarantee gets released in 90 days or that farmhouse comes out of the collateral. 3. My wife's handwriting goes on jars made in this county, nowhere else. 4. Monday morning, 7 o'clock in the break room, Dana tells the floor herself, every word they heard tonight, from her. Then I said the last part, and it's the only part I had to stop in the middle of. To the 41 of you, I signed papers I didn't read. That's on me and I'm sorry. Rosalie's chair went back across that wood floor like a gunshot. Then Hollis, from somewhere in the dark at the back. Say it louder, boss. Some of us are old. Grant Whitfield left before I got off the stage. I watched the door of the Grange swing twice behind him. The email came on the 30th of June, 2 sentences. Whitfield Ridge was withdrawing the term sheet and wished the family well. $12 million gone in 41 words. Bryce printed it out. I don't know why. He found me in the gravel lot behind the plant a week later and he had the printout folded in his fist. You killed it. Bryce, 12 million. You killed your own company over a plaque on a wall. He was shaking. My son is 34 years old and he was shaking like he was 9. Do you know what she signed? Do you know what Dana put her name on? 2.4 million, I said. I know. That stopped him. Then how do you sleep? I want to give you the honest version of my answer because I've cleaned it up since. I didn't kill anything, son, I said. I just stopped paying for the funeral. He threw the printout in the bed of my truck and drove off, and I stood there a while. Kevin came out about 10 minutes later. My son-in-law had an envelope in his hand, and he wouldn't quite look at me. This is the Phase 2 model, he said. The full one. The one you didn't get. How long have you had it? Since February. He walked back inside. I've thought about which of them I'm angriest at, and it isn't Bryce and it isn't Dana. It's the man who had it in a drawer since February and gave it to me after it stopped costing him anything. Monday was 3 days out. 7 o'clock Monday morning, the break room at the mill. 41 people. Folding chairs, the bad coffee, the corkboard with the softball schedule still pinned to it from May. No Marissa, no slides. My daughter stood up in front of the people she'd been photographed with, and she said it. Dyer County, first quarter 2027. 6 positions retained in Ohio. She said the 4 men at the motel were transition staff. She said she'd known since February. She didn't blame Grant Whitfield, and she didn't blame the market, and she didn't cry, which I think took more out of her than crying would have. Rosalie asked one question. Only one. Were you going to tell us before Christmas or after Dana opened her mouth and nothing came out? She stood there for what people tell me was close to 20 seconds. That's the answer. Everybody in the room heard the answer. I wasn't in that room. I sat in my truck in the gravel lot the whole time with the windows down and the radio off, and I want to explain why because people have asked. She's my daughter. I came for the truth. I did not come to watch her get taken apart in front of 41 people who've known her since she was in a stroller. That's a line. I decided where it was, and I stayed on my side of it. Here's the part I didn't expect. 3 people stood up for her. Denise from QC said Dana paid her hospital bill in 2022 out of her own account and never told anybody. 2 others said the same kind of thing. My daughter is not a simple story. Neither is my company, and by August the county wanted a word. Arlene Voss opened a compliance review in August. The 2023 agreement was plain. 38 full-time positions in Cedar County through 2033 in exchange for the abatement with a recapture provision if we didn't hold up our end. If production had gone to Tennessee, the county would have come looking for about $610,000. The county doesn't want the money. The county wants the jobs. Voss made that clear in a meeting that lasted 40 minutes, and we signed a revised retention agreement instead of a check. Nadine refinanced the line through a consortium of 3 local banks. Higher rate. 1.4 points higher, which costs us real money every month, and which I'd pay again. September 4th, a letter came certified. Release of guarantee. My name, the note number, the date. I stood in the bank parking lot and read it 3 times, which is what I do now, and I didn't move for about 10 minutes. Ruth's pin oak came out of the collateral that day. That's how I think about it. Then Jonah Prentice called. Public television wanted the story. The whole thing, the real one. And he wanted to build it around 4 minutes of audio his board had caught at the mixer, which turned out to exist after all, on a backup card in a bag in Columbus. He was excited. He kept saying it was important. They have to live here, I said. So do I. Sir, cut it. All of it. You've got my permission for nothing. He argued for 6 or 7 minutes. He's a good man, and he thought he was doing me a kindness. I hung up and drove home. I'd already taken enough from my children that year. Rice resigned in October, took a job in Columbus with a logistics outfit. We agreed he'd sell his 12% back to the company over 3 years, which is a fair deal and about as much as either of us could manage. He calls Willa on Sundays. He doesn't call me. That's where it is. Dana came out to the farmhouse on a Thursday night, in the rain, with the 10-year lease in a folder under her coat. She'd brought a lawyer's letter, too. I saw the corner of it in her bag. She was loaded for a fight. She sat down at the same table where I signed the 11 pages, and she didn't take the letter out. She sat there a minute. Then she said, "Why did she write them in pencil?" I didn't understand at first. "The cards," she said. "Mom's recipe cards. Why pencil?" So I told her. Ruth said, "Pen makes you commit before you're ready, and a recipe isn't finished the first time you make it, and the apple crop is different every fall, so you write it in something you can change." Dana put her hands over her face. She cried at my table for a long time, and I let her, and I didn't say any of the things I'd rehearsed since May. When she was done, she slid the lease across. I signed it. 10 years, fair market rent, 38 jobs through 2033 written in. Then I said the only sentence out of all of this that I wrote down beforehand, because I wanted to get it exactly right. "You're my daughter. You'll always be my daughter. You're just not my lawyer, my banker, or my biographer anymore." She nodded. She didn't argue. She took the letter out of her bag and put it in my burn barrel on the way to the car. People ask if I took the company back. No. I'm 63. I've had 1 stroke. I read things 3 times, and I'm going to keep reading things 3 times. And there is no version of me that should be running a $12 million operation. Dana is still the CEO. She's good at it. She was always good at it. That was never the argument. What changed is the room she does it in. There's a 3-person advisory board now, and one of the seats belongs to somebody who works on the floor. Hollis Mercer took it. He shows up in a clean shirt, and he says maybe 9 words a meeting, and every one of them costs somebody money. I open the old cider house on Saturdays. The hand crank press came down out of the loft. Kids turn it, and their parents take pictures, and I sell about 11 jars, which is not a business, and I know it's not a business. Tuesdays, I teach at the Votech in Ashland.
Machine maintenance, second-year kids. 14 of them. One of them is Marcus's nephew. The crooked apple sign is back up on the wall over the loading dock, right under the brass plaque about the 38 jobs. Hollis hung it himself and wouldn't let anybody help. And Willa rewrote her essay a 3rd time for a state contest, and I want to read you her first line because she made me check the dates twice before she'd turn it in. My grandpa doesn't tell you things unless you ask him a question. Let me give you the numbers, since numbers are the only way I know how to tell you whether it was worth it. Revenue was down 9% in the back half of 2026. 2 grocery chains paused us in July, and both came back by February. We're up 4% this year. The Nashville office closed. The rebrand budget, $480,000 for new labels, new photography, a font somebody flew in to choose, got cut in a single line item. 41 jobs stayed. 6 more got added this spring, which makes 47, which is the most people who have ever worked in that building. Rosalie is 2 years into her mortgage. Her younger boy is at Ashland with a welding scholarship. The labels didn't change. Ruth's pencil handwriting is still on the front of every jar, and underneath the logo there's a line of small type that wasn't there before. Pressed in Millbrook, Ohio since 1991. In March, Dana was at a trade show in Cleveland. A man with a headset introduced her on stage as the founder of Owsley Provisions. I wasn't there. 40 people were. She took the microphone and she said, "2 people started this company. I'm the 2nd generation." She says it every time now. She has said it in 5 cities. It cost her a $12 million round to learn that sentence. I don't say that with any pleasure. I'd have given her the $12 million. I just wasn't willing to give her the sentence. June 12th of this year, 1 year on. We did an anniversary open house at the mill. Tours, cider a tent in the gravel lot, the school band murdering 2 songs. Emily Rooker came back. She's freelance now. She got let go from that crew a week after Founders Day, which I found out about too late to stop, and have never entirely gotten over. Dana hired her to shoot the event. That was Dana's idea, and she did it without telling me, and I found out when a young woman with gaffer tape on her sleeve walked across the lot toward me. "Mr. Owsley?" "Emily." She held up the lavalier. "Can I mic you?" "Go ahead." She clipped it to my collar and reached for the transmitter switch, and I put my hand over hers. "I've got it." I turned it over. I looked at the little window until I could read the channel number, and I read it twice the way I do. Then I pushed the switch up myself. They had the sign behind me, the Crooked Apple EST 1991, hung under the brass plaque about the 38 jobs. My granddaughter was standing on a milk crate at the front, with her arms crossed like a foreman. 200 people in a gravel lot, waiting on an old man to say something. Last year, nobody knew my microphone was on. This year, I turned it on myself. And the first thing I said into it was her name. Ruth. That's the whole story, and I'll step out of it here. I'm not going to ask you whether you've ever felt invisible. Everybody has, and it's too easy a question. Here's the one I actually want. What's the last thing you signed without reading it, and what would you do differently now? Put it in the comments. I read them. And if you want to know what Rosalie Trapp did the following spring, the thing that changed who actually owns that plant, it's in the description. Thank you for staying with an old man this long.